How's it going, YouTube? It's Jacob here from the Rush Dimension, and today I'm just going to share with you guys my second place Sky Striker deck profile. I really enjoyed playing the deck. This was the first time that I played the deck ever at a locals event, and it went pretty well. I unfortunately lost first game for not really, how can I say, understanding most of the mechanics in the deck, also versus the deck that you're playing. It was a branded variant, and lost that one unfortunately 2-1. But for the rest of the day, it was pretty easy once you understood how the mechanics of the deck work. It is one of those toolbox type decks, same as BAs. And well, not to waste too much of your time, let me just hop straight into it, and I will explain the card choices and some of the ideas that I had while going through it. So first of all, I'm just going to pack out the starters for you. So of course you need to have 3 rays. I went with the 2 rows instead of 3, and it worked quite well for me. I didn't want to have too many starters in the deck, and it did what it needed to do. There wasn't any like weird situations where rows came up, but it was there as the starter that you need to start the plays. Obviously the 1 Hornet drones and just the rotor to be able to search any of your ladies. And then we're just going to go straight into the hand trap lineup, because I think that's where the meat of the deck actually is, between the hand traps and the spells. So the reason I wanted to add more like hand trap based and going second cards to the deck was for the sole purpose of you never really want to commit too much to the board in case you're like going into games 2 and 3. When the one side deck has happened, you kind of want to have some disruption in your hand as well, should they be able to out what's on the board itself, Twin Twisters or Feather Duster or anything like that. The Ash Blossom and DD Crow in this format is pretty good going against any branded variants, as well as most of your rogue things that you will play against. And then obviously Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence kind of does the same thing in this format. So that's why I just went with, these are actually just the hand traps I play, and Infinite Impermanence in this case, although it doubles up as a hand trap in your own turn, it also helps you break a board should you have something else in your hand. So for the board break cards that I went with was, I added in 3 droplets, and I went with Triple Tactics Talent. So the reasoning behind droplets being obvious, trying to get, it was brilliant all day that I played in the tournament, and getting extra spells in the graveyard, or having useless spells in your hand that don't actually work against an opponent. You just throw them into the graveyard, resolve one of your normal spells, any Sky Striker spells, and then you have 3 spells in the graveyard, and you can get extra pluses off the spells from there. So that was the idea behind droplets that I had, as well as being able to crack boards or just switching the board off temporarily. We're going to add in the 1 copy of the Mystic Mine. I'm just going to put that there so that you know that was in the deck. I only played 1 copy in the main, and I think I played, yeah, in the side I had the second one with a Metaverse. So I didn't stack the deck with Mystic Mine. This was essentially to act as a additional Infinite Impermanence or an additional droplets. Triple Tactics Talent went over the Upstart Goblin and the 2 copies of Desires. I just thought, I got a bit nervous playing Desires, but that's just my opinion. You can take this with a grain of salt. This can be a flex spot on its own completely, and you can either add any 3 spells that you feel, something like Lightning Storm or anything like that you choose that will do something more for you as a player. I just went with Triple Tactics Talent because there's no additional cost to draw 2 cards, and playing yourself into a corner where you've kind of the 10 cards that you banished off the top was kind of some of the Sky Striker spells you needed to be able to play through your opponent's board, or how can I say, the longevity of the deck has now been kind of altered because of some of the cards that you've milled. Like most players, like myself as well, only play 2 Shark Cannon, and if you've used 1 Shark Cannon and the other one was banished off Desires, and you're kind of in a weird spot where then you have to rely on multi-roll to be able to use the Shark Cannon in the grave again, if it's a graveyard type deck that you're playing against. And currently the type of way that people play Sky Striker, you kind of want to have that one either a copy of Widow Anchor or the Shark Cannon to be able to grab a monster from your opponent's side, and obviously being able to link climbing to get to access code or whichever win con that you are using. And that was just thinking about it. So this kind of has two extra effects in my opinion that could come up. If your hand is great, your opponent uses a hand trap to stop whatever thing that you did, you can use triple tactics to shuffle a card back from their hand, get some hand knowledge, or grab a monster from their side of the field if it's a problematic monster. Or obviously the main reason I put it in was to draw 2 cards. So most of the time when I resolved triple tactics talent, it was to draw 2 cards, and it went pretty well. And I don't play the upstart because I'm not trying to give you an extra turn in Sky Striker, because everyone knows that Sky Striker it takes a bit of time to get the engine rolling, depending on how great you drew. If you drew the nuts, then it's all gas and you can just play through anything and get anything started. But the thinking was, I'm not trying to give you an extra 1,000 life points, then I have to sit on a extra copy of a Yate for a bit longer, or try and get some more damage in to get you into the threshold where something like access code could kill you. Comment in the section below if you have a different opinion about this, or if you agree with me. However, and if you feel that the deck needs a pot card, then sure, then we can try it out. Like I've tested it out for a bit, and I was a bit nervous with the results. Sometimes you get good results with drawing the 2 off desires, and sometimes you get bad results. And that was the main reason that I thought, okay, fine, let's either drop the desires completely and go for something that makes me feel a bit more comfortable. So for my type of playstyle, that's what worked for me. And to the few extra spells, I did play the 1 Call By, the 1 Typhoon, and Terraforming. So the thinking behind it, obviously, that for going first purposes, if you get forced to go first, then this is cool. This is also fine to act as like a third cannon to get stuff out of the graveyard if you need to negate something on the field, or everything that Call By needs to do. This is what it does in the deck. Terraforming to either find mine or area 0. Typhoon was just an extra out for something that you might see if your opponent plays something like Mystic Mine or Floodgate type thing face up. Anything like Anti-Spell Fragrance, this is supposed to deal with that first, well, I'm gonna say the first duel, round 1, that you should be able to deal with that, and it performed quite well. Then to get into the Sky Striker stuff, I play 2 cannons. 3 cannons actually, it might be the thing going into the format further, but that's just my opinion. Being able to use your opponent's monsters on the field to go into your link plays, or just being able to get stuff out of things like the Golden Lord, get that out of the graveyard. Any zombie type stuff, get it out of the graveyard, then they can't play for a few turns. And this was great for me. Then for the Widow Anchors, I unfortunately only have 2. When I bought the deck about like 2 or 3 weeks ago, it only came with 2 anchors, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know Sky Strikers that well, and most people I spoke to said 3 anchors is the way, and I apologize, I only have 2 anchors. However, we did get the 1 change of heart, so I'm substituting the 1 Widow Anchor for a change of heart, and this came up, it did its job. When you drew into this, you didn't need an anchor for the turn, which is pretty cool. And obviously, in my opinion, if I do find a 3rd copy of Widow Anchor, I'm definitely swapping it out with the change of heart, or either just keeping in the change of heart as a board break type card. And but in my opinion, this was fine, and this actually gets more of a response from your opponent than what Anchor kind of did. So this was great all day. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I only played 2 copies of Afterburners, and in the third Afterburners place, I play the Jamming Waves. Kind of does the same thing once there's 3 spells in the graveyard, obviously, as what the Afterburners did, but this just has a non-target removal, which is kind of something the deck lacks. And so that's the only reason I added in the 1 Jamming Waves. And then just for the other few cards, I have obviously the 1 Multi-Roll, the 1 Engage, and the 1 Area 0. So that's the main deck. So one of the ideas that I had with having something like the Triple Tactics talent, if you do find yourself that your opponent has been outing your cards in your turn with spells and traps, that you don't have a monster effect that they had to resolve for you to be able to activate the Triple Tactics talent, you can obviously set the talents and then either send it off the multi-roll or send it off the area 0 to get your plays going from there. So knowing what you play against it has a huge impact in how you structure your plays going forward. So I found that not searching engage off the get-go is kind of OP. Then what I end up doing is I use the shiz to add engage in the end phase, and then kind of just send with Hayate. I would send the card that you need, that you would kind of search off engage, if that makes sense. So you use Hayate, then you'd send the cannon, or you'll send the jamming, or you'll send any of the cards that you need at that moment, and add it back with Kagari, and then in the end phase I will add engage, so that this isn't in the graveyard for them to be able to take advantage of it being removed. And then in your next turn, the engage is kind of live, or better chance of being live with having more spells in the graveyard. So that was just the thinking behind how I would play engage. And multi-roll is obviously brilliant. If you are going second against a graveyard type deck, you add off the shiz, you add the shark cannon, you use the shark cannon, you trigger use the effect of multi-roll, set the cannon again, so that you'll be able to use cannon again in the following turn, and being able to cut into their graveyard, removing monsters that are problematic. One of the channels I have that I watch, other YouTubers, is I do spend a lot of time on GGYGO's channel, and for me he's the best Sky Striker player that I know, and he's been teaching me a lot of things that I did not know about the deck, and what kind of interactions wise, how would use certain cards in which situation, when to hold certain cards. And one of the best informations that he gave to me was you never commit too much to the field besides 2 interruptions. So if you have 2 hand traps, you don't need to set anything to the field, because most decks currently can't play past 2 disruptions. So if you've interrupted your opponent in their turn and your play starts, they don't do anything on your turn, unfortunately, that's fine. You just park 2 negates or disruptions onto the field in the form of a cannon or a anchor, and the rest is in your hand to play safely. And you just keep adding a second negate to the field, so that you always have 2 disruptions playing into turns 3 and 4 and 5 going forward from there. And that was one of the best informations that he gave me. There was never a time where someone would activate a card like Twin Twisters or something to wipe my back row, and I'm crying, because then I'd still have cards in my hand that would be able to disrupt them if I've kept like an Ash or a Veiler or something in my hand and not commit a lot to the field. So that kind of worked out pretty well, and that's information that I thought actually does work. Then going into the extra deck, I chose to go with 2 Hayate. I think it's kind of the best way of going about it. If you've used your resources correctly, the third one should not come up. And obviously 3 Kagari, because it's the best card in the game, and 3 shiz. One Kaina that barely comes up. It does have the one interaction of either helping you win in time, or if you are in a situation where your opponent is trying to punch over your board, and then you can float into this from the ray, and it just stops 1 attack, which is pretty good. Then I had the 1 Zeke, which I played it at 2 for some time while practicing at home. The Zeeks come up a lot if you have cards in your main or side that kind of give you tokens. So anything like if you play Token Collector, or if you play copies of Nibiru, or anything that would generate something on your side of the field as well, then playing more than 1 Zeke kind of makes more sense. And then obviously the Hulk for the Celine combo, I played the 1 copy of Dark, because I just thought that, okay, fine, most of the cards in the main deck, especially Ray, is Dark, and you kind of get into Ray a lot faster than anything else. And getting a Dark monster off a Shark Cannon or off a Widow Anchor is a lot more likely than, how can I say, using Liner. Although you can actually theoretically use both, because you do play Light and Dark in your main deck. But Dark was actually brilliant for me, especially going into the branded matchups, and that kind of worked for me. And this being able to climb into something, because it is a spellcaster, you can go into Unicorn, and you can go into the Celine, obviously. It worked out quite well. So if you are in the situation where you need to get rid of the opponent's Mirror Jade, then you jump into Unicorn, shuffle it back, and you don't have to worry about the end phase destruction effect. which is kind of something that messes up the decks playing forward. And then for the last card, I do have the 1 access code. Weirdly enough, I barely used this, because by the time I get to going from dark into unicorn, I've kind of got the hold on the game, and most of the people just kind of scoop from there. And that's it for the extra deck. And one cool interaction that I actually picked up, because one of my matches during the tournament that I played was a Sky Striker mirror. And it was pretty interesting, because it was, how can I say, the first time I played Sky Strikers, and then I played against someone playing Sky Strikers, and that was pretty intense. He kind of had a bit more, he was a bit more street smart going in against, playing against Sky Strikers, so he knew when to take out the Rays out of the graveyard, or any of those type of things. The one point that I did catch him though is that I used my Shark Cannons to grab his Kagari, and then using his Kagari to grab a spell from my graveyard. And that was kind of, for him, it was kind of annoying. It's something that he didn't know that you can do, and I felt that was pretty cool. That you just don't use your Kagaris, and you're able to reuse a lot of spells that your opponent could not. And that was kind of the edge that I had playing against him, is that I just had one extra idea that he did not think of. And then just applying most of the stuff that you usually do with any other deck against Sky Strikers. Just keep the Rays out of the graveyard, try not to get them resolving the Kagaris or the Engage, try and get the multi-roll off the field. So that was just the basics that I thought, playing against Sky Strikers, that's kind of what you would do. Going into the side, Twin Twisters just for back row, hey, because I felt that you still kind of need to be respecting anything like skill drains, or anything that can switch the board off, or how can I say, not let you play. And knowing that most of your opponents side into something like anti-spell, you kind of want to have this with the 1 or 2 main deck outs, in the sense of MST that I main, or anything else, just to be able to get rid of those things. And we still have a lot of Eldlich players, and one of the matchups I had was a branded Eldlich / zombie variant. So I used the Twin Twisters just to keep the Eldlich players kind of at bay, and any floodgate types that you know will be sided in against you. Something like anti-spell kind of kills the deck, skill drain kind of makes it difficult to play. So that's the main reason that I went with Twin Twisters in the side. And then going further, I did play the artifacts in case you get smart players like the Sky Striker player I played against. He obviously said to me go first, and then I was like, I've got you. And I scythed him, and it went brilliant. He didn't know what was happening. And then just for the rest of the side, I did play 3-dimension barriers, and this was good against, I saw this against the branded player. I just didn't have the follow-up after I've locked him off this, so that was one of the reasons why I lost. And then I just added in the 1 Metaverse and the 1 Mystic Mine, just to be able to, if you are going first and you don't see a mine, then you can use the Metaverse activating the mine out of the deck, and that will act as an additional disruption in your turn if you need to add in a lot of traps going first. So that was the idea behind that. And then how can I say, I'm going to call this the spice of my build. I went with 3 Ghost Bells. The reason I went with Ghost Bells is that a lot of the players that I play against are main decking something like DD Crow. Then I add in the bells as a safety net, so should they try and DD Crow one of either your multi-roll or the Engage, which is obviously the best targets, or even the Ray, then you can at least stop it with this. This is I can call this the flex spot. This could be Nibiru's, this could be anything that you feel will work better in your environment or in your locals. I went with this because I saw a lot of people either main decking or either then side decking DD Crows, and this did quite well. And I think that is it for the video. I don't think I have any other extra information that I can think of right now. If you guys have anything that you'd like to share, or any ideas that you can throw in the section down below. And that is all that I have for today, guys. I will see you in the next video. Peace.